Author opinion of Denis Keen at the history, geography and architecture, culture and life manners of Kazakhs in the program Discovering Kazakhstan.
In today's program, mystery of the Altai Mountains, summer holidays in Bukhtarma, unique ecosystem of ribbon forest.
Salam, привет, and hello. I'm Denis Keen, and today on Discovering Kazakhstan, we will be discovering the natural beauty of eastern Kazakhstan. Of all of this country's 14 provinces, none even comes close to the scenic beauty that you can find in eastern Kazakhstan province. We're going to be going to the legendary Altai Mountains with their snow-capped peaks and bubbling hot springs before spreading out through the region to look at different lakes and forests. Come along as we journey through this wild land. In search of the cleanest Altai air, we drove hours up bumpy roads to one of the most remote parts of this province, to come here to the legendary lake resort of Rachmanov Springs. It's located on this amazing lake in the heart of the Altai Mountains, a place that has been attracting pilgrims for hundreds of years in search of this very serenity. There are more than 48,000 lakes in Kazakhstan, but this must be the most beautiful. Ringed by deep green coniferous forests, Rachmanov Lake's smooth surface reflects the beautiful clear sky of the Altai Mountains. Running out of Rachmanov Lake is the crystal clear creek called the Arasanka. Arasan in Kazakh means hot springs, and the river is named in honor of the many local radon springs that have long attracted tourists to this remote area. Rachmanov Springs is one of many sanatoria, or health resorts, built around hot springs in Kazakhstan. Local people strip down and bathe in these hot waters, not just for pleasure, but for the supposed healing properties of their chemical makeup. To really experience the beauty of Rachmanov Lake, you have to come out on the lake itself. So we're out here in a beautiful little rowboat with a motor on it, scooting over the water, and the water is just fantastic. It has this kind of glass-like appearance and a spooky dark color that gives this place this otherworldly feeling. So we're gliding across this dark water of the lake. I'm looking up at the forest, and there in between these two rounded peaks is the most beautiful waterfall, like some kind of mirage. And they tell me that it's called the Hair of Veronica. Now we're gonna find out why, but first we're gonna go for a little hike to get closer to the falls themselves. All along the lakeshore here, we can see these beautiful violet flowers growing in abundance. And we've seen these flowers before in our hikes around Tolgar and in the Altai region. It's a special plant called Ivan chai. Chai in Russian means tea, because this was the plant that actually Russians used to make tea before tea leaves themselves ever came to the country. It was only later, sometime around the 17th or 18th century, that this mass-produced Chinese black tea would arrive to Russia. Before that, they would use this plant. One of the joys of hiking in the Altai is the wealth of wild berries. So as we've gone to hike here up to the waterfall, we can see all along the path there are these little guys. They've got a funny shape. You're used to seeing berries being kind of small and round, and these kind of look like flattened grapes. So we'll give that a shot. It's called barbarica. It's not that good actually. It's very sour. Up here we have ones that are more notorious for being tasty, what they call krasная смородина. I think these are called red currants. And here are kind of more of a classic berry shaped little red guy there. So you can come along here, have a nice little breakfast. Well, just as the waterfall is coming into sight, the guides have warned me that this is the steepest incline of all, and I can already feel it. We are already at some elevation, but to get to the top of this guy, we're gonna have to do some serious hiking. Well, it's true, it is quite the climb, but it's totally worth it because behind us we have this fantastic view of the black water of Rachmanov Lake. And then, look, we've arrived already. Here is Veronica's Hair waterfall itself. We can go have a little dip and cool off. You don't normally see commemorative plaques at the foot of a waterfall, but the man that is depicted here is closely connected to this locale. His name is Salken Sultan Berdin, and he was the first to study the medicinal herbs and grasses and plants that grow in this area of the Altai. Starting in 1935, he would come out to Rachmanov Lake and go on hikes throughout this area, trying to find what kind of natural cures there could be for common ailments. I have to imagine that he was tapping into a deep reservoir of Kazakh knowledge about the plants here. Because after all, these nomads have lived here for centuries, and the Altai has long been thought as a place that is rich in this kind of plant life. Kazakhs took advantage of this and used the wild world around them to treat whatever ailed them. Waterfalls are usually named after people, right? Like Victoria Falls in Africa is named after Queen Victoria. So Veronica's Hair Falls is admittedly a pretty weird name, but as usual in this part of Kazakhstan, there's some kind of legend behind it. So they say that once upon a time, there was a young girl named Veronica, or we will call her Veronica. And she was suffering from terrible, terrible headaches. So she went to the local wise man who told her to come to these falls and wash her head and all would be well again. So she hiked up here, put her head under the falls, got her hair wet, and instantly she was cured. So in honor of the miraculous power of these waters, they named the falls after her, the Falls of Veronica's Hair. They also say that the water flow itself is quite thin, kind of looks like strands of hair, and altogether resembles the braids of a young girl. Well, I think I'm gonna go see how it feels to have a dip under Veronica's hair, if she doesn't mind. Just from dipping my feet in here, this water is super cold, but let's see how it goes. One of the charms of the environment around the lake is just this thick forest of trees that surround us on all sides. And this is something that you can't find in a lot of parts of Kazakhstan, where it's quite flat, dry, and arid. But we are 1,760 meters above sea level, which is exactly the level where coniferous trees start to grow. So these are evergreens like spruce and fir and pine. They give the air a very pleasant scent, and it makes a nice kind of backdrop to our journey by boat here across the lake. The Altai region is famous for its rivers, and we have come on a kind of river safari. We started on Lake Rachmanov, and actually this river we saw before. It was the river that was leading out of the lake, the Arasanka. But this is the river on the other side where it feeds the lake. The water here is crystal clear and quite calm. On either side, we have these beautiful conifer trees and this kind of riparian habitat of these grasses all along here. I imagine that inside of here we would have small little rodents, rats, and muskrats, and weasels. And there are a lot of bird life up here in the trees. If only I had some binoculars to check them out. So we have landed on terra firma, and here we can confidently say that we are far from civilization. This boat has taken us down this river into the middle of the forest, and here it is just complete serenity. Just me and the animals. I can hear the birds squeaking above. We could go for a little hike here, but the grass is quite high. So let's walk around and see what we can find. Up there we just caught a sight of a beautiful hawk doing laps around us. What he's doing is that he's taking advantage of these warm air drafts that are coming up from the earth. The sun is beating down right now, it's midday, and he's just riding this warm wind in circles. What's especially strange is that we've come to the side of this river and it's totally quiet. I can hear some bugs chirping, I can hear a few birds, but for the most part, it's silence. So to see him just floating up there so peacefully, it's kind of a meditative experience. here we're coming to the point where the river Arasanka meets Lake Rachmanov. And you can actually see the difference in the color of the water. Here it's kind of almost murkier yellow or brown color. There it's that deep black color. The lake has several sources in addition to this water. It's also thought to be fed by underground springs. Well, when we were on our river safari, I saw those guys out on the kayaks, and I thought, that looks too fun. I have to try it for myself. I've never been on a kayak before. I've always been kind of scared about them flipping over. But here, the water is really not that deep, and with such beautiful scenery around, so much to explore, it's a great way to get around the lake. The water here is notoriously still, but when you're out on the motorboat, you can't quite feel it because it's making its own ripples, and you've got the noise of the motor. But here, when it's just me on this kayak, you can really see how flat and glassy the water is here. It really is something else to be out here on the water. Well, these guys who inspired me to come out here gave me some advice. They said they've just been doing this for 2 days, but they've already gotten the handle of it. They said the secret is you gotta be very gentle when you put the oar in the water. And I do have to say, when you try it like that, it's quite relaxing. The Altai is famous not just for its water resources and for its flora and fauna, but also for its mineral resources as well. So you'll often find these kind of boulder fields, for example. This is what I suspect is moraine, so that is rocks that were pushed by ancient glaciers centuries ago into formation. And over those centuries, they've gathered this kind of brilliant color on them. There's this kind of organisms here called lichen in lime green and black that give it this really neat appearance. With so much snowmelt coming down from the peaks of the Altai, this is a region that is rich in rivers. And it seems that no two rivers look the same. We have some, for example, like the upper Arasanka, that is sandier and clear. And then you have ones like these that are full of boulders. We're here at a very unique time of year because in the spring, the volume of the water is much higher and the rivers will have a much different profile. You won't be able to see the rocks here at all. But come summertime, the water recedes and you get this fun little effect of these boulders scattered throughout the stream. You can hop out here, have a seat, lay down and catch some rays and listen to the bubbling of the brook. There are places in the Altai that are so remote, so far from civilization, like Rachmanov Springs and the beautiful Rachmanov Lake, that around them naturally arise these kind of discovery myths about how they were first kind of auspiciously stumbled upon. And in the case of Rachmanov Lake, this story does not disappoint. It tells of a hunter sometime back, perhaps in the 19th century, who was hunting around these parts, a Russian guy named Rachmanov. And he shot a morel deer. This is a kind of roe deer. And he had thought he had fatally injured it, but he watched the morel sneak away and go into some local springs. And he saw how those springs steamed up and bubbled. And when the morel came out of these hot springs, he saw that it had been miraculously cured. So the legend goes After this, Rachmaninoff went back and told all of his friends and family, and it became a famous place where people could come and take advantage of these curative springs. These springs are indeed one of the sources for this lake, so the lake was also given his name, Rachmaninoff. And this humble hunter from way back when now boasts two famous places in his name. You can sit in a bathtub indoors and get your radon water treatment in there, but you can also have it outdoors. And I have to say, I kind of like the idea of sitting out here in nature and enjoying these hot springs. They've built this kind of platform here around a place where this spring has come out, and people can sit on these planks and dip their feet in. Ooh, and it is just as warm as we saw before. Very relaxing. I can imagine, especially in winter when it's freezing cold out here, this gazebo here will be a popular place to hang out and thaw out your feet. Long suspected to be the site of Shambhala, the Buddhist paradise, this beautiful mountain has been a site of pilgrimage for centuries. In addition to attracting Buddhists and paganists, Mount Belukha has long attracted people of all faiths, including the Russian settlers who came to the Altai and practiced a Russian Orthodox Christianity. The mountain also provided them with inspiration, and up here on top of a hill with a breathtaking view of the Twin Peaks, they built this charming chapel. Inside the chapel, you find a tight, intimate space. The walls here are lined with miniature Russian icons featuring the Mother Mary or Jesus or various Russian saints. There are papers here that have been printed with special prayers that travelers can read for good luck on the road. Inside the boards, you will see these little pieces of paper have been wedged into the space between. These are special requests and prayers that have been made to the chapel here. You'll find little candelabras here where people have put these beeswax candles to accompany their prayers. All in all, it's a space, though small, it feels filled with a certain hope and a certain beauty, helped by the fact that just outside the window is a perfectly framed view of Mount Belukha itself. One 120 kilometers from the provincial capital of Öskümen, the Bukhtarma Reservoir is a favorite getaway for residents of this city, but strangely unknown for many other citizens of Kazakhstan. Strange indeed, because it is the largest reservoir in the entire country and indeed one of the largest reservoirs in the entire world. It is so big, in fact, that locals love to call it their sea. When I first saw Bukhtarma, I thought, that is one beautiful body of water. And then I thought, why should any one body of water be more beautiful than another? They all contain the same H2O, don't they? And I realized that really what sets it apart is the relief of the landscape, is what surrounds the reservoir. And it's in this that Bukhtarma really sets itself apart from other lakes that I've seen. It has the most beautifully charismatic hills crowning this body of water, or the sea as the locals like to call it. As they fade to the horizon, they change from shades of blue to gray, and it is stunning to see, especially in the evenings. Though I do have to say, one of the things I like about the reservoir is that there are not too many vessels out there cluttering this beautiful landscape. If you do want to go out on the water, there are plenty of ships and boats that are willing to take you. You can go out for the day, get some sun, have a little picnic, and enjoy your time out on the smoothest waves of the Bukhtarma Reservoir. The province of East Kazakhstan has more fresh water than anywhere else in the country. And during the late Soviet period, it was decided to harness this resource to create much needed energy. So they dammed the Bukhtarma River to make the Bukhtarma hydroelectric station. The river then flooded this plain here, which was an uninhabited rocky place, to create the new Bukhtarma Reservoir. The place has a unique geography that makes it feel as if it's always been here. Because it has these rocky cliffs behind us, the terrain is spectacular. The territory of eastern Kazakhstan is vast, going from the heights of the Altai down to the flatlands of the steppe. And if the rivers of the mountains were fast and fierce running downhill, this is the broad, classic river of the steppe, the Irtysh. We expect to find forests in the cool alpine locales of the Altai, but here, not far from the city of Semey, is a very unusual ecosystem, a pine forest growing in the sandy soil of the normally treeless steppe. Semey's ribbon forest is a product of a unique topography and weather patterns that produce snowdrifts, which limit the growth of trees to certain narrow bands. The effect is as if an artist decorated the hills with their gentle brushstrokes of organic green. Nestled within a narrow ravine of this pine forest is a spring so special for local people that they've built a small log shelter to protect it so that they can swim here in all seasons of the year. The water here flows so freely that even in the depths of winter, it never freezes over. Just like we saw at Rachmanov Lake, people near Semey have found a special spring that is said to be great for both your spiritual and physical well-being. With dozens of Russian Orthodox Christians gathering here to bathe in its waters, you realize that nature in eastern Kazakhstan is still something that is treated with reverence. We've seen so much natural beauty on our travels through eastern Kazakhstan, from the groves of Uskmen to the waters of Bukhtarma to the beautiful alpine scenery of the Altai. But if there's any image that will stick with me from this trip, it is of the fields of sunflowers stretching to the foothills. It's been found that the climate and soil here are uniquely suited to growing these beautiful flowers, which are used to make two crucial products: sunflower oil, which is used for cooking, and sunflower seeds, which are widely chewed throughout Kazakhstan. I never got the hang of chewing these seeds, as they call them semechki here, but I do just enjoy being surrounded by all these bright, sunny faces, and I hope that it makes you happy too. Thanks for joining us today on Discovering Kazakhstan. Until next time, salbo, paka, and goodbye.